there's something that, a contradiction, Tobias, that I want to point out at. And we haven't discussed it here yet, but we have discussed it previously, which is your love for the word didactic, which can be often perceived as, rigid, old-fashioned, condescending, whatever it is. And then facing this word, which is didactic, you have the word, and you've used it quite a few times, experiential. So how do you combine both? Is there a place for the didactic in the experiential, or the other way around? How can it work?
Yeah, it's a good question. Paul, do you ever use that word? Probably not, right? So I was taught by my American and New Zealand colleagues that this word does exist in the language, and I looked it up in Merriam-Webster, but at least Americans never use that word. And since I cannot pronounce methodology very good, so I like the word didactic because it sounds so funny in English. But basically, you can describe it, and I think that's what experiential learning is. I think didactic or whatever, or methodology or whatever you might put in there, or even technology in a sense, in a more literal sense, it is about thinking of how to get the message across. It's not about, there's content, there is information that is going from A to B and back and forth. And I think we have been concerned about content, or maybe even obsessed about content in the past 100 years, and really putting that out. But in an age where content and information is abundant, and just, you need to hit a button and everything, and you have everything at hand, it is more about that, how to convey things and how to design a way of learning and those experiences and systems and frameworks. And that's what I think is didactic, or whatever word you want to use, is about. It's about designing as a user experience. It's designing learning experiences, and I think, of course, within a good outcome in the end, where a student or a learner learns something new and does something to acquire new knowledge. And I think that is the aim. And the confusion comes in because people basically think it is about once that the learner can retrieve the information that somebody has sent, then this is learning. But that for me is not learning, because it's just storing information in another brain, and you're more likely to forget it soon after the test or whatever. It's more about really struggling. And if you look at learning science, you can see a lot of research that it is always better to let people struggle and put obstacles in their way, so that they not get the master solution or the easy shortcut to the answer. But it's more about struggling, and you learn better when you struggle. So and it is always hard, and learning, it will always be hard, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's painful. It can be a lot of fun to solve riddles and hard things. You just look at chess and all the puzzles and all that kind of stuff that is really could be engaging. Or in game design, Paul, you probably tell a lot about that, how games work and all that kind of stuff. So I think that is not mutually exclusive. So it is hard, and it always will be hard. And I strictly oppose anybody that is claiming that we can create shortcuts to learning. However, we can design it in a more efficient way, because it can be more fun. It could be more outcome oriented, and not so much about just conveying information from A to B.
So can we say that the connection between didactic and experiential is the journey? That It's not about the outcome, it's not about the result, it's not about knowing or not knowing, it's about going through a process, going through a series of steps and milestones that eventually will lead you to this kind of a holy grail, which is the outcome of learning.
Yeah, I mean, that's as old as mankind. If you look at storytelling, if you look at Campbell's hero's journey, that's, for example, something we're integrating in the new program now. It's always, you know, this going out, call for adventure, then you're struggling within it, then there is some kind of catharsis. Look at the Greek methodology and stuff like that, and you're coming back and then applying that knowledge. It has been that way, and I think we humans as a species, we are wired like that, and we should design learning accordingly. So it's always a journey, and I'd rather use the word trek in the Shiftschool sense, because I want to emphasize, I might be a little picky on words sometimes, but journey is more like, you know, people think that it is a fun cruise on a cruise ship and they don't have to do stuff. And that's why I use trek, because it's hard work, and we will struggle and we will fall back, and we have fallbacks and we have crises, and that is good, because that's the way we learn, and that makes us as personalities, and that builds our character. And there is no perfect process. It's always an up and down, and it's probably not one journey, but there are many journeys connected to each other over time. And I think that's what life is. That's what many religions described. I'm an atheist, but if you look at religions and storytelling, and it's all there, and we should integrate it. It's not that hard. It's all there has been there for ages, centuries, millennia.
Thank you for bringing the Greek mythology into this. It's actually quite relevant to the beginning, how Ulysse first starts the book. Ô muse, conte-moi l'aventure de l'inventif, celui qui pilla Troie, qui pendant des années erra. So it brought up some good mythology-related memories. So no, I think it's journey is often, yes, misunderstood, because we think it's going to be easy, but that's, I think, how learning usually is perceived. We expect it to be easy. We expect to read something once or twice and then immediately understand it or immediately grasp it. Whereas the way we learn best is by really anchoring that knowledge within us. And embracing the journey with, and as you said, the hero's journey, embracing the journey with all the ups and downs and plot twists and difficult moments and difficult challenges and sleepless nights and all of that kind of a tempest of emotions that can be involved in the process of learning. And that is why the games that you talked about, and Paul talked about a bit earlier, before we actually started the podcast, it's a bit of teasers for you guys. So it's interesting. Why? Because the game, the plot, it involves us emotionally. And when we sit back and watch the screen, we're not emotionally involved. And it makes sense for the learning not to stick around. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at kids, they, like my kids, for example, when it comes to math, they say, what do I need that for? Why do I have to do that? That kind of question, you hear that a lot. And so you have to design stuff that affects people, and stories and are one means to do that. So if I see or I get the point why I have to learn that, and then I have the motivation to do it. There are, of course, some other paths that are more immersion, so we can trick people in a positive sense into stuff as well. Sometimes we can force them into their luck. However, I think it is crucial for adults. Adults always want to understand why they have to do stuff, but I think it's also true for kids. Yes. And we need to, and it's not about explaining them what they have to do on a rational level. I think stories and putting them into situations where they can experience why things are important are the best way. That's the highest level of didactics, or the art of designing education.
I knew you were going to use the word.
I did it on purpose now.
I like this way of breaking down that balance between the didactic, between the methodology and the experiential learning, because I completely agree that it's not just like a journey. It's more of an odyssey. And again, that brings us right back to the Greeks. It's something that isn't always pretty, and in the long run, maybe people don't feel like they can get through. And that's part of why I really think it's important for it to be something that is embraced as a lifelong process, where you're not succeeding or failing. It's just that tomorrow you're going to try something a little different, maybe, or work with what works, and ideally broaden your base of experience. I really like that focus. I think it makes a big difference in how we approach learning. Do you have any advice for people who are considering retraining, maybe changing gears, or otherwise growing to embrace this lifelong learning as adults?
Yeah, and because it is hard, and it can be not dangerous in a physical sense, but of course it can be quite disruptive. And once you started that journey or that track, there's no turning back. And I think that's why a framework is so important. I've mentioned those pillars before. I think everybody could design that in their social environment. So forming a mastermind group, a social community, finding people that hold each other accountable, but also uplifting, in times you're down, in times of crisis, you need somebody to relate to and talk to. It could be a coach, could be a friend, could be many, many different systems. And also seeking inspiration from many sources. So building a diverse network of people that you can learn from is essential. I think you need those ingredients to design your learning system in one way or another. It doesn't have to be a formal setting like in Shiftschool. You can also design it for yourself. But I think you need some kind of framework, some structure, some guidance. Otherwise, you will be lost in. And of course, you need some kind of a direction towards something. Otherwise, you set out the sails and just going back and forth and zigzagging across the ocean. And I think that's not the point. So you need some kind of direction and some structure, some safety net. And I think then you're free to experiment. And I think you'll see that if you talk to successful entrepreneurs, if you talk to like educators or great educators and many different people, they all tell the same story, and it's the same ingredients. If you look at effectuation, if you look at the hero's journey, if you look at many different things, I think it all, at least in my world, it all neatly fits beautiful together. And that's what we basically did in the new program. So we have been stealing from all different areas. So there's that book, I don't know if you know that, Steal Like an Artist. I don't know if you heard about that one.
Yeah,
I really like that
one.
notion. So it's not about picking and combining this eclectic way of designing and experimenting with new stuff, adding a little bit of new stuff and taking it out. I think that's necessary. But yeah, you need some framework. Otherwise you get lost. I truly believe that.
In Lebanon, we have Steal Like a Politician. It's a twist to steal like an artist.
That's a different thing. Yeah.
Yeah, very different, very different.